Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in my last video, I talked about a YouTuber named Milena Ciciotti, and I figured out that I'm pretty sure her last name is pronounced Ciciotti. I was pronouncing it Kikiotti, but I guess that last name is Italian, so I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. She came out with a video titled How to Get Your Husband Drooling Over You, which the impression that I got from that video was, in order to be a good wife or be an outstanding wife, that you need to be kind of waiting on your husband hand and foot at every opportunity.
How to have your slave driver drooling over you.
Yeah, pretty much. Some of her points were you should always be sexually available to your husband, and the only exceptions are if you're sick or injured or just had a baby, but otherwise you're supposed to always be willing to have sex with him. Another one of her points was, if instead of nagging, you should just pray. So if your husband's doing something that's bothering you or not, helping out the family or negatively affecting the family, that you should just pray instead of actually talking to him about it.
I like how men created a whole religious system where they're literally allowed to play Fortnite nonstop and no one can tell them otherwise because God said it's okay. Yeah,
I feel like that's kind of like what the whole video was. Like, going out of your way to reduce the responsibility that your husband has. Like, his only job basically is just going to work, and the wife kind of has to do everything else. I mean, you didn't film the video with me, but you watched it. Would you say that's kind of what it was like?
Yeah, absolutely.
So her and her husband, Jordan, actually came out with a video titled How to Have Your Wife Drooling Over You. That's supposed to be aimed at husbands, but as we'll see when we watch the video, that's not really the case.
God, that's why you have me here? Okay.
In my video talking about how to have your husband drooling over you, I also talked about how a lot of the points that Milena gave were really similar to this book that was published in 1973 called The Total Woman. Yeah. And I suspect that that book greatly influenced her video because a lot of the points were kind of the same.
You're charitable by saying suspect. Well, like, you showed me the evidence.
I have to cover all my bases. I can't say for sure, but it seems pretty, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try to couch it in anything. I'm pretty sure it was a direct ripoff, but
I mean, I think that's kind of clear in this video too, because one point is almost verbatim from the book.
Ah, great.
So, in this video we're going to do today, we're going to react to their How to Have Your Wife Drooling Over You. And we'll also talk about some of the similarities between this video and The Total Woman too.
Gotcha.
But this is going to be more of a pure reaction.
Cool.
We just want to have a conversation for wives to know what to pray over for their husbands. What we don't want to encourage you to do is angrily text this video to your husband and be like, you need to do these this week. We really want it to be from a place of you having already tried the 7 things that I suggested in the last video and apply those for months at a time, because it's not going to be just you showing up and hugging him at the door one time that's going to shake your entire marriage. It's probably going to be a couple of years of doing that. It's going to be years of being kind. It's going to be years of being generous. Especially if you've been married for a long period of time and there's years of resentment and just breaking of bad habits, starting these new habits and doing them several times is what will make the big difference.
And the wife has to be the one to initiate this and do this for potentially several years before the man has to even learn about these things.
And this is why I really think that she got this from The Total Woman, because that's a overarching message in the book, is that working on your relationship, working on your marriage has to start with the woman. In the book, I can't remember what the exact quote is, but it's something like, before a husband can love his wife needs to first respect him. And it talks about how all of this, bettering your marriage has to start with the wife. She's the one that has to initiate it for whatever reason.
Yeah, respect is earned. You don't just deserve it because you're a man.
Yeah.
Don't tell me whether or not this is a continuing theme here, because I want to figure it out on my own, but I suspect things.
Yeah, we'll see further in, but yeah, we're not even 2 minutes in, and this is supposed to be a video that's aimed at husbands, and yet we're already talking about what wives need to do. And yeah, you'll see that that's kind of you'll see.
Not just doing it once and not seeing a difference and be like, well, this is stupid, and throwing in the towel.
Yeah, like Melina said, if chances are you're not a husband watching this, you're probably a wife or a fiance or girlfriend. What not to do would be, from my perspective, wouldn't be to like text this or say this or force your husband, boyfriend, fiance to sit down and watch this video with you. Be like, sit down, you need to do all this stuff. It has the opposite effect that it should, where it's like, okay, now it's just a comparison game, or it's somebody who appears to have it all together and they're perfect, and like, why are you not like this? Because that's how it's going to come off. And I would say just try to take what we're doing real quick and then just try to initiate it yourself. You be the one to initiate it. Whoever's watching this right now, congratulations, you get to be the initiator. Do it in a way that's not expecting reciprocity right away. Like Melina said, it's going to take a while. So if you're initiating with no expectation of, okay, I've been the one implementing all of these things for 2 days now, what the heck, why is he not, reciprocating that? Don't get discouraged. Just pray for God to change his heart, and you keep doing you, sister.
Yes.
I'm kind of confused why they're conflating, showing this information to your husband with like forcing it on him.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, I kind of want to ask them personally about what they're trying to communicate here, because it sounds simultaneously like they could be saying, don't come at your partner in an aggressive way when trying to do things to better your relationship. That's good advice. But then they're also kind of saying, like, don't expect anything from the man, and the wife should have to do all of it, or it should be expected that the wife does all of the work and the man shouldn't really have to reciprocate. And if he doesn't reciprocate, then just like hope and pray that he will, because it's actually bad for you to confront him about him doing anything wrong.
So I think that their thinking here is really influenced by something that Melina was talking about in her previous video. She kept on repeating that a wife won't be won over by a husband won't be won over by a single word their wife says. And she gets that from this verse in 1 Peter 3, which she actually misquotes. It's not what the verse says. But I think that's kind of like their underlying thought process is nothing that a wife says or nothing a woman says is going to change her husband's behavior, and what they need to do is just like pray instead. So I think that's why they're kind of saying here, like, don't take this information to your husband because your husband's not going to listen to you no matter what you do, no matter how you approach it. Even if you approach it with, kindness and just wanting to have a conversation about it, it's like that's not going to work. Because men, I guess, don't listen to women.
If you want me to stop spending all our money on cigarettes and Mountain Dew, you're going to have to pray to God that he'll stop me. Like, what? Yeah, this is absurd.
My first point to have your wife drool over you is to pay attention to her. I mean, there's active listening and then there's passive listening, right? Like no TV, no phone, no multitasking on something else, like you're working on something, or even like eating. I guess it's different if you're like out on a date, right? But if you're doing nothing but just sitting here and staring her in the eye, and she's talking to you about, whatever that is on her heart, like, hey, what's on your heart? What's on your mind? Talk to me. I think that's probably going to be very weird for a lot of guys at first. Like that's going to feel uncomfortable.
What?
Why would that feel weird?
What? Why? Like
if you care, if this person's your wife, you married them.
Yeah, you
obviously, you should be caring about what they're talking about, right? Like not just completely ignoring them.
Is this like an experience that other men actually, I mean, yeah, clearly by how other men act a lot of the time, but it's like, I can't relate to that at all.
Well, and I think it's because conservative churches teach that you're not really supposed to listen to your wife.
Yeah, and that's why I was teased for hanging out with the girls without actually ever trying to get a girlfriend actively when I was in the youth group.
Why are you paying attention to a girl? Like, you shouldn't be doing that.
You don't have the intention of sex. Why would you care about a woman then?
But I also feel like this first point, it's like, so the whole video is framed as these are tips for you to be an outstanding husband. Not just like an average husband, but an outstanding husband that's getting your wife to be obsessed with you and drool over you. And your first point is just pay attention to her, like notice that she exists. Like that's the bare minimum. Like shouldn't you, if you're in a relationship with somebody that you say that you care about, wouldn't you be already doing that?
Yeah, like here's how to really turn a woman on. Look at her. Be willing to look at her rather than play a game or text your friend. Yeah, I mean,
I feel like that's just the bare minimum
like
what you should do.
It's not bad advice, but like, yeah, this is the bare minimum.
But yeah, I think it's bad advice when it's framed as this is what you can do to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this is what you should be doing, like, at the bare minimum,
right.
You know? And I think if we contrast this with what Malena's first point was in her other video, it was like, pray instead of nag. And she's talking about how if your husband comes home from work and instead of helping you with the house or the children, he's just playing video games, you're not supposed to say anything to him.
So the woman's supposed to go absolutely above and beyond and do multiple jobs with a man who's acting completely useless, and she has to be okay with that. But a man just has to be willing to look at his wife. Yep. I can't wait to hear the rest.
Point, I'm going to reiterate it, but I heard a pastor recently say, like, guys will have sex with women, but then we'll feel that praying with them is too intimate.
Or it's like looking into their eyes is too intimate.
There's no more intimate action than sexual intercourse.
Right.
Which is why it's reserved for your spouse.
I want to push back on that point because I don't think that even in marriages, sex is the most intimate act you can do. I think for some people, that is very intimate for them, and it might be the most intimate thing. But not for all relationships and not for all marriages, because there are people that are asexual or on that spectrum and they don't feel that connection necessarily through sex. They might do something else in their relationship to, like, they might consider something else to be the most intimate act they can do.
Yeah. Also, I would also say that if it's kind of revolutionary to hear the advice of you should look at your wife, I'm going to go ahead and say that your sex is probably not very intimate, actually.
Yeah.
Like a man,
you're clearly not listening to her.
Right. It's clearly just like a, get in, get out. This is just like a purely physical thing that has nothing to do with building any kind of connection or caring about what she wants. It's just like for him.
Yeah.
And that's not intimate.
But then to think that what's the most intimate thing you could do spiritually with your spouse, I would argue that one of them at least is to pray with each other. It's just ironic that guys are like quick to take their pants off, but when it comes to like praying together, whoa, that's a little too like close to the heart, that's a little, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like that's just something where you feel vulnerable or exposed or naked spiritually. Yes. So if you're able to give full attention, and again, I'm going to keep saying this is me, like Paul in Philippians 3, not to say I've arrived yet, but I'm straining and I'm striving towards this. So that's my posture, and this whole thing is I'm a work in progress, all right? So anything that I say is speaking from that level and not, okay, I'm up here and everyone else is down here. So as I do that to Malena, she's like, wow, he's actually paying attention. He's actually listening. I'm more important to him than whatever he's doing right now. And he can stop and pay attention to me.
And can I add that I think in order for you to get to the place where you feel, one, comfortable enough to look at me in the eyes and talk to me, you first have to feel respected by me. And I think me respecting you is what will allow you to...
See, that's why I think that she read this book, because she says, before my husband can be expected to pay attention to me or show me love, essentially, I need to first respect him.
Yeah. No. I mean, like, every person, it doesn't matter what your sex or gender is, every person has to earn the respect of other people.
Right.
And I think it's good, like, when you meet a new person to operate in good faith and be like, you could be a good person, you could be a bad person. I'll, keep that open, the possibility that you are worthy of respect. And then I'll judge you based upon your actions. This is like respect a man no matter what he does.
Yeah.
And then hope that allows him to, do such and such. If you want to set an example for him to follow, I understand that. But like, this is not saying set an example for him to follow. This is saying that women must do this and men have a different set of rules.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think just setting an example for somebody can be a good thing, but you should also have the expectation that they're going to model your behavior.
Yeah.
And this kind of seems to indicate that no matter, it could be years down the road, it doesn't matter if he's, not following your example. You still just need to continue setting that example and just kind of put up with him being a shithead, essentially, and just be okay with that because he's your husband, and the fact that he has the title of husband means he's automatically deserves that.
Yeah, and to me, I look at it the other way. The fact that he has the title of husband means that he's made the commitment to do as much as her. Mm-hmm. Like to be a worthwhile partner and mutually consent to everything, not to act unfairly or in an imbalanced way. Yeah. I think that they see like the commitment of marriage being kind of the exact opposite of the way that we see it. It's like a commitment to share things entirely and respect each other equally, not to have a completely imbalanced thing. Yeah. It's like clearly this form of marriage is just made by men so they can manipulate women without having to do anything.
Right.
To do that. But if every time I'm approaching you, it's nagging, which is my first point. My first point was to pray instead of nag. If I'm constantly approaching you with insults, nags, and complaining, there's no way you're going to feel safe and okay and respected and open enough to even have these conversations with me. So again, most of these I feel like starts with the wife because we tend to go to these places and build up these relationships and habits and don't allow our husbands to get to that point.
Yeah, that's great. And even speaking from Elena's position, like even if your husband isn't worthy of honor and respect in your eyes, still give him that because at the end of the day, it's positional honor, not deserved honor, if that makes sense.
Well, just like
I should honor Milena as my wife, regardless if I feel that day or that like in that moment that she's worthy of that, you know?
Yeah.
But they're not saying that the wife or that the husband needs to respect the wife and do all these things for her, even if she's bad. Yeah. Like he says this is positional honor. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, you just said the thing that we're suspecting. But then he completely contradicts himself and says, or contradicts her and says, no, this effectively doesn't start with the woman. The man and the woman are obligated to do this. But also the woman is obligated to do this first. Yeah. Like this doesn't make any sense.
It's very clear that and we'll see this later in the video. I mean, they repeat this several times. Yeah. It starts with the woman. It starts with the woman. It's like, why? Yeah. I mean, in a relationship, you should both be putting in equal effort. Mm-hmm. And like, that's not to say that you'll always be putting in equal effort, but you should be striving to do that. Yeah. And it seems like they're saying, no, the wife needs to first put in the effort, and like the husband can't be expected to put in any effort until she does first.
Would you agree with me when I say that them saying that no, the husband has the equal obligation to do this is like them just playing lip service to
I think it is,
not being bad people?
Yeah, I think it's like because deep down, whether or not they're aware of this, I think that they know that what they're saying is kind of fucked up. And they're kind of just like repeating things. I think that they've heard from their church or the environment that they're in. It's probably mostly older people that really adhere to kind of traditional marriage values. But they know that it's not good. And so they kind of like add a caveat at the end. Right. And it's like, but that adding that caveat doesn't negate everything you just said. Right. You know, and the whole thing with like, oh, it's positional. Your husband deserves your respect and honor because he has that title. It's like, no, he has that title because he's already put in that work. Absolutely. Not he has that title and then he puts in the work. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, this is setting women up to be controlled by useless piece of shit men.
Yeah. Yeah, because men can treat their wives badly and then turn around and say, well, I don't think that you as the wife has put in enough effort and that's why I'm treating you badly.
Right.
Isn't that what the Lord does to us? And isn't our relationship with our spouse supposed to be a reflection of Christ in the church?
God honors us by giving us the same inheritance as his children, right? The right to become sons of God. There's nothing we did to earn that. Right. So he's honoring us even though we're not honorable, right? And there's nothing redeeming of us but that Christ is in us. So
yeah, but if we don't literally give our entire lives to serving him and worship him and call him the greatest being in the universe, then he burns us in hell for all eternity. I don't really think that's very respectful.
Yeah, I don't think that's very loving or respectful.
This is ridiculous.
In the same way, we have the same honor that we give our spouse, even if there's at times where we feel, or even justifiably, rightly so, that they aren't worthy of being honored. It's more so me saying like, yeah, I really did blow that, or I don't deserve Milena, or I don't deserve to be treated like this, but what an opportunity it is for you as a wife to be Christ-like in your love towards your husband, to say, you don't even have to say it because he probably already feels it, but just to be like, I still honor you, I still respect you, and regardless of what you do.
I'm just so confused why this is a video that's supposed to be aimed at husbands. This is supposed to be tips for husbands, and I feel like they've so far spent just as much time, if not more, talking about this is what you need to do as wives.
But no, we're not saying it needs to be unfair. We're just saying that the wife needs to do but she should be respected for doing all the work.
I mean, I think that they could make the argument that, you know, they talk about wives so much because most of Milena's viewers are probably women. But then my thinking goes to, well, why are you making these like gendered videos then? Like, why? Like, why not just be giving general advice for anybody, you know, no matter what your gender is in a marriage? Why is it like, why are you making a video aimed at husbands then? Like, I feel like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I get that.
All right, what's your second point, honey?
The second point is to notice the little things. So women are very, I would say, emotionally observant. They can pick up on things more so, generally speaking, than guys can when it comes to emotions and feelings and sensitivity. When you notice things like, oh, she styled her hair differently, or she's wearing a new outfit, those things go a long way. And it doesn't have to always be like external things, right? It could just be, hey, I noticed you changed this or you changed that. Or when we notice little things, those little things end up paving the way to the big things.
I kind of feel like this point is just kind of reiterating the first point. Like how your first point was pay attention to her, and this is notice the little things. Isn't that kind of pretty much the same thing? Like, just notice that she exists as a person.
Yeah, he's kind of putting the same concept in just slightly different words, but men are not very emotionally observant, so he's got to do that.
I mean, I think, I don't know what the research says about it, but I do have a hunch that women generally tend to be a little bit more emotionally observant than men. But that doesn't mean that men shouldn't try to improve that about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they should be, you know, observant of how their wife is feeling. And to me, it's just, it goes back to, like, if you're in a relationship with someone, you should already be doing that. Like, why would you not?
This is like, I feel like this is advice for like teenage boys.
Yeah.
Who have no experience at all. If this is for husbands, this is like a huge red flag that you should get divorced. If he's not doing this, like...
Yeah, it's like, it goes back to, like, this is the bare minimum of what you should do. If you are in a marriage, you should be doing this already.
Right.
Like, why are we framing this as, here's what you can do to be, like, an outstanding husband, you know?
When it's really just, how are you?
Yeah, it's like, shouldn't you be taking an interest in your partner? That just seems like that should come about naturally to me.
Meaning having the same weight as something big. The more you can notice and just be mindful of those little things that are important to your wife, that goes a long way. And that's going to, oh, he noticed that, or oh, he thought of me, you know. Those things like that really go a long way in getting your wife to drool over you. Isn't that the end goal, right?
Well, my second point was to be extremely kind and extremely generous. And again, I feel like it plays off of that. If I'm showing thankfulness and being extremely kind to him and the little things that he's doing, he's going to suddenly start noticing the little things that I'm doing. But like, there's default things that our husbands are doing too that we just don't even notice or realize.
Yeah, we should champion those too.
Yes.
Like, champion that in your husband, because I'll give you an example, like, this will come up later on too, but just in the realm of like protecting my wife's physical safety. As a husband, to have that championed and affirmed and reiterated to me, hey, honey, I feel safe with you. I feel, obviously, you know, there's more to it than just physical safety, like emotional safety, you know, spiritual, all that stuff, right, goes into that. But just in that one aspect of physical safety, that to me reminds me of my obligation and my God-given responsibility to care for her and her physical well-being. And for her to reiterate and champion that and affirm that in me is helpful, not only for reminding me of this is my role, but also to say, yes, like
take ownership.
She trusts me, or her confidence is in the role that God has put me in.
I feel like after every single tip, they automatically turn it around to being about what the wife needs to do. Like, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction that they have. Yeah. But I kind of feel like this whole, my wife should show thankfulness that I'm, protecting her safety. I feel like this is kind of a like, oh, I want my wife to like reaffirm to me that I'm a big, strong man.
Yeah,
That's
I kind of took
how
it that way
feels.
a little bit too. It also rationalizes why men have to be large and have to be strong.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how much like other men would bully me and say that like I should say other boys and their dads usually would bully me saying I wasn't like masculine enough. And they'd say like, you're never going to get a wife that way. And they'd simultaneously make fun of me for having so many female friends.
It's like clearly something's working for you.
I'm like, it works out just fine. Like, you're just really bad at it. Like,
yeah,
it's, I don't know, this idea that there has to be like a specific, like one specific role for a husband. It's like, okay, I mean, then I guess you and I shouldn't be married because you're too gay and I'm too small. Like that, ultimately, that's kind of what this comes down to. Like, but we just don't live in a world where
it's like
people
you're not
have to occupy those roles for things to work.
What's your third point?
Number 3 is to pray with her and for her. Back to the whole, you'll get into bed and you'll have sex, but you won't pray with them because that's a little too intimate, right?
Yeah.
That to me is just hilarious because that was me. We kind of sort of prayed together, like maybe before a meal. Like that was like the extent of our praying together. Before bed or after date night or something, we would commit to praying out loud verbally.
Yeah.
With it. Like that's weird at first. I get it. Like that's probably uncomfortable for a lot of couples, especially maybe a husband to do. But when you can be vulnerable like that, or if you're a wife, again, the goal isn't to say, "Honey, sit down. I'm chaining you to the couch." I'm chaining you to the couch to watch this real quick. My 2 cents, my advice as a husband: say, "Hey, honey, I would love for you to pray over this situation that we're facing, or what can I be praying about for you?" And then instead of just like him telling you what to pray for, and then you say, "Okay, great, I'll pray for you," be like, "Let's pray right now," and then you hug him. You say, "Lord, this, that, and the other," and in the moment you can even say, "Is there anything you want to pray about, honey?" And then he might pray for you or ask you, just pray about it. And pray with him and see what the Holy Spirit does. I think you'll be surprised. He might say, "Wow, thank you. Is there anything I can pray about for you?" And then he'll do the same thing in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So the more you do that, the more comfortable you feel around each other. And like, I'll pray over Milena in the morning, like when had a really bad migraine or really bad stomach aches, and stuff like that. So just in the moment, being able to pray like little things like that become the big things, and you get more comfortable, and then your wife's affections are stirred. Like, ladies, imagine right now if your husband came up to you and put his hand on your head or on your heart or hugged you and embraced you and then just started praying over you, for you. Like, you can't tell me that wouldn't just make you go wild.
It is like that.
I'd be like, what? What's happening?
All right. If I embraced you and started chanting some Luciferian, cryptic thing, then you would go wild, but that's you.
I guess, my opinion here is like, if you're both religious or spiritual, I don't think that it's necessarily bad to be praying for one another or praying together. But I think, again, if we contrast this to what Milena said in her other video, she said for wives to pray instead of talking to their husbands.
Right.
And here it's saying husbands pray and that's it. Like, there's less expectations for men.
Well,
like,
there's
they're
an
not saying pray instead of talk to your wife.
There's an expectation that the wife will join, and like that if he wants to pray with her, then she does have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that like if you are religious, then doing this kind of ritual together will be a bonding thing and like can be very helpful. And I've seen people that are religious, Christian and not, who do ritual together, and it's like it definitely bonds them together. One of the things I wonder about though is I've heard Christian men say that it's weird or uncomfortable or awkward to pray out loud together. I've never actually heard like any of my pagan friends who are married say something like this. They don't think that it's weird. Like, and I wonder if it's because their way of doing this is less based on you have this role that you have to occupy no matter what, and then you have to perform this thing and use all this coded language, or else you're not like valid. They think like if you're there and you're trying, you're valid. Do what
Yeah.
works for you. And I feel like that makes more sense.
And I feel like it's probably because people are pagan. Paganism is a minority religion, so people that are pagan are so like willingly, versus people that are brought up in Christianity. It's usually kind of something that's passed down from their parents, and it's an expectation. It's like it's performative, and it's like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it's not intrinsically motivated, versus it's more likely if someone's a pagan that is an intrinsic motivation for them.
Yeah.
Like they just want to do that genuinely, not because they think they're supposed to do that.
That's very well put.
Did you mean to line yours up with mine? Because they're lining up so perfectly.
No, I
My
didn't.
third one was to be sexually generous. And when Jordan prays over me or is intentional about that, boy, do I want to be sexually generous. Because it's an emotional, you're like tapping into this emotional and into my soul. And it's like a different type of...
The physical and the emotional
Yeah,
and
they
the
are
spiritual are all so interconnected.
So interconnected.
They all play off each other. Like, do you ever notice when something is heavy on your heart and in your spirit, and you're just really weighed down and bogged down by some issue, you can also start feeling physically ill.
Or you don't want to eat.
Yes.
Like your physical body.
But that's not because of a physical issue. It's a spiritual or an emotional issue that's now spilling into. So we're not getting all weird on you.
Okay. Yeah, this is what we're talking about when we're saying that these things are passed down, and it's an expectation that you believe this. It's not something that like you come to because it's like reasonable or rational to be the type of Christian that they are. Because no, your emotions, they are tied with your physicality. Your spirituality is tied with your physical body, because our emotions are produced by electrical signals in our neurological systems and hormonal signals in our lymphatic systems.
Yeah.
Like, it's not because there's like a ghost living inside your body. These are physical things. And I don't think that means
we can observe it and explain it.
Right. Like, that doesn't mean that you just reduce it to like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's not like conservative Christians do. If it's physical, it's just dumb and doesn't matter. And it's not, transcendently meaningful or anything like that. You can take the interactions between the physical and the emotional seriously without getting into woo-woo, and like actually, instead of actually understanding how these things work.
Yeah.
It's the way God created us.
Yeah, we're
soul,
triune.
We have all
body,
of it.
soul, spirit, just as God is Father, Son, and Spirit. So yeah,
I love that
they're all
point.
connected. So yeah, they definitely, one can affect the other essentially.
Yes. Just the last little point I want to make on this one is that when your husband does choose to pray over you, to encourage him to not pick his prayers or to sit here and be like, oh, or like laugh. Just be mindful of your reaction to the prayer. Like be mindful, because again, if someone's already really stepping outside of their comfort zone and they get mocked or like they get insulted, they're never going to want to do that again.
I think it's good to not laugh or mock your partner, but it kind of really feels, and like this is the impression that I got from her other video, that you're having to like walk on eggshells around your husband so that you don't like, that he's so fragile.
Yeah.
Like, and you have to be super kind, and like he can't take any feedback or constructive criticism at all. So you just need to be like really careful all the time that you're not even slightly making him upset, which I don't know. It's just like, if you're both adults, you should be able to sit down and kind of discuss things that are bothering you, or, critique somewhat, kindly to each other. And I don't think the solution is to just like never say anything, like never have any sort of like feedback that's not overwhelmingly positive.
Not mocking someone when they're stepping outside of their comfort zone and trying to, be charitable to them is very good advice for either partner. It's just that when you look at it in the context of the video that you did, the one before this one, you realize that she is saying, wives need to do this. Husbands just need to show up and look at you.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It's like there's very little that's expected from husbands, but yet women have to go like way above and beyond, while men just like show up.
Yeah. Things she'll appreciate without her having to tell you.
That's another one to get you sexually generous.
This applies especially if you're going to be like out of the picture or gone or maybe on like a work trip or working all day. And now we're getting to, you know, particular dynamics and household rhythms and things like that, but we're just telling you from our perspective or our 2 cents. So for example, let me give you just one example of what I mean. Thursday mornings, I have a early morning men's Bible study at 6 a.m. I know that normally there's a lot, like the morning, if you win the morning, you win the day kind of thing. That's so true and applies heavily in our house. Especially
on our Thursdays. There's like specific days that specific things happen. And so that Thursdays tend to be like my busiest days because Jordan is gone so early and I have to tackle the morning. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, keep going.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, so I have study at 6 and I'm usually not home till like 9:30. By then, like, you know, kids are up, breakfast, dogs, this, that, and the other, everything's already done, right? Like the first kind of whirlwind of the day is already gone and it's subsided. For me, I just wrote down here, I'm gonna read verbatim. Those early morning hours are crucial and help set the tone for the rest of the day. So if I put away dishes, start the laundry, prep breakfast before I leave, that's a big win. And yes, it's a bit more effort and I have to get up even earlier, right? Like if I need, say that's going to take 30 minutes to do all that, then I need to wake up 30 minutes earlier, you know? Or maybe 45 minutes because usually the first 15 minutes I'm just like putzing around trying to like, oh, do I get up or not? Like contemplating what is life. But then I finally like get over myself and do that. So, but it pays off big time in the long run because that helps Milena out a ton, which isn't really a lot of extra work or effort on my end, but it helps tremendously. It pays like huge dividends on the back end because now Milena's waking up and she's like, all I have to do is like be with the kids and care for them, play with them, be present, and breakfast is already prepped, or, you know, there's minimal work that needs to be done now. I don't have to worry about unloading, you know, so all those different things is pretty self-explanatory, but that goes a real long way too, versus...
It really does, and I'll be thanking for it later.
The days that I haven't done that, it's been really stressful.
So I find it interesting that for husbands, doing household chores is
one day a week.
You know, yeah, it's like doing your wife a favor. Like that expectation is placed on the wife that that's her job.
Yeah.
You know, that's automatically her job. And me doing any of that is just like helping her out.
Yeah.
When it's like, no, like you live in this house too. You're part of this family. It's there is an expectation on you to be participating in that kind of stuff.
Right. I thought it was funny, the specific example they used, because Thursdays is a certain kind of day for us too. And it usually means that during, like, you typically cook, and on Thursdays you're doing something while you'd normally be cooking. So like, it's my responsibility to figure out what we're going to eat that day. But yeah, the thing is that it's not me doing a little extra to take over her responsibility so that I will be paid dividends later. It's like, she has things that she has to do. I am free on Thursday. I don't want things to be unfair. Yeah, I live in this house, so I do that thing.
Yeah.
And like, if you feel like I'm not doing enough, like, of housework or like cooking or something, because you tend to do more of that, then you tell me, and I'm like, okay, let's figure out like what is fair for you.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not doing it so that I can get a blowjob.
Yeah. Like she said, she's like, oh, now that makes me, you know, want to be very, you know, thank him later for it.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. It's like, he should just be doing that because that's just part of being a husband and a father and an adult, not so that down the road she'll, you know, have sex with you or something.
Yeah.
And like, there shouldn't be an expectation on the wife, and that now I like owe him that because he did something nice for me. Now I owe him to be like thankful with my body, basically.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how they kind of flirt with egalitarianism in their language, but then ultimately, like, what they're preaching is right is hardcore patriarchy.
Oh yeah.
Like they're saying like,
they kind of water down what they say.
Yeah, they're teaching like patriarchy, but then they'll be like, he's like, guys, if you want her to, you know, really like you, just like give her a little bit of power and control and actually respect her. And it's like, that's not that's not patriarchy. Like that's egalitarian.
Yeah.
It's like people who live in the suburbs when they want to go to a place where they can take a really nice walk, and they go to, like, here in Austin, it's the Domain, where there's shops and like apartments all in the same place. You're visiting that because you like it, but then we don't want to like build that way and live in that. They want to live in patriarchy and visit egalitarianism when he wants to have sex.
Yeah, that's definitely how it seems. Like they want to play with that idea when it like is beneficial for the man.
Yeah.
But still, like, their day-to-day is going to be, you know, misogynistic.
Right.
Fair for Milena, so now I'm like, okay, I gotta make every effort to do this and to stick to this because I'm getting time to be poured into myself. So I would feel guilty and like it'd be selfish if like I'm not returning that to Milena or reciprocating that from Milena. So apply that to your context. It might be like maybe your husband's gone early morning anyways, or maybe he works a 12-hour shift or something, or maybe it's late at night, you know. And so like I don't know, it's just everyone's different, right? And so kind of figure out how that would apply to your context of how you might be able to help your wife. And you're with whatever she might have to do, that can go a long way.
And it has like a domino effect, because now after that, I'm like, oh great, what can I help him with I know that he has to do, or what can I do as an extra step to serve him? And then the other thing is when he does do that, please, please, please do not go and nitpick what and how he did it. It can be so easy to be like, well, you unloaded them wrong, or you put the things in the wrong spot, or that's not what I would pack for them, or this wasn't done right and you missed this spot in the counter. That is just so unproductive and shows such a heart of ungratitude and is only hardening your own heart. And I've been so guilty of this before, and it's not doing Jordan any justice and it's not doing me any justice. I am not Jordan's mom. Jordan is not our cleaning lady. There's just some things that we just have to be thankful for. He did the dishes. Sure, that dish doesn't go right there, but that's fine. It'll take you 4 seconds to put it back.
Okay, yeah. I think we should start this off by you playing the clip from your last video where we talk about the dishes. What did you say about the dishes and how I loaded the dishwasher?
So I told you that it's best to just start the dishwasher even if it's not completely full, because it helps to keep the dishes from piling up in the sink.
Yeah. And so I said, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I'll do that next time. And then we both said, well, you should have prayed about it instead of saying
I should have prayed instead of asking you directly.
Yeah.
I'm not a godly woman.
You're a nagging wife. Yeah, it is important the way that you give constructive criticism or tips or whatever you want to call it to your partner. Mm-hmm. But telling them, hey, you know, this might be a better way to do it, spoken like respectfully or kindly, is something that the man should be willing to like take.
Yeah.
If she's delivering it nicely, then he shouldn't take that as like some unfair nitpick or something. It's not an unfair nitpick. You're trying to do this right. You can
still be thankful that your husband did that, and at the same time say, oh, hey, next time, you know, can you do it this way? Because that's actually, you know, that works better, or this is where that's supposed to go.
Right.
Communicating with your husband is not being mean.
Exactly.
And like they really, like Milena especially, really thinks that communicating or saying anything that could be like slightly misconstrued as negative, or that isn't like just, you know, her on her knees like, oh, I'm so thankful that you know, did this, is like wrong. And it's like being unkind to your husband. And it, you know, just goes back to like, I feel like everything is like, oh, women need to walk around on eggshells around their husband and like make sure that they don't say anything that could slightly be, you know, misconstrued as at all negative.
Yeah.
And I just think that as a husband, you should be able to take some criticism. It's like, if you can't, that says something about you. That does not say something about your wife.
It is telling that they are not saying, men, make sure that you don't nitpick your wife. They're never saying that. They're expecting that if you criticize your wife, like basically in any tone whatsoever, then she should have to deal with that because that's her role.
But a wife doing that, you know, giving her husband any kind of feedback,
even kindly,
even kindly, is like nitpicking or nagging.
Right.
Number 5, go to bed with her. I kind of chuckle at this because I'm like, oh yeah, duh, like it's bedtime, go to bed, right? For whatever reason, I feel like I get my second wind after I put the kids down around like 8 p.m.
And I cannot relate because I get my second wind like right before I start dinner, and it carries me through until like 7:30, and then at 7:30, Jordan tucks the kids and I in.
I mean, 6:30, 7 p.m., whatever, something about how my body is wired around that time. This is probably irrelevant, but I'll share anyways. I could fall asleep standing up. Like that, I'm just cashed.
And he
at
has
that time.
before. Like, I've literally looked over him at dinner and he's like this.
I don't know what it is. Around that time, I gotta figure that out, but I'm like dead to the world. But then 7:30, kids are bathed in their pajamas. Like, I'm tucking them in, singing them goodnight songs. Like, 8 o'clock, they're down. And I'm like, all right, playtime, you know? So then I'm like, okay, I can finally catch up on something that I was watching on TV or YouTube or whatever, or I can work on a task or like do something, you know, calming or unwinding or something like that. You know, that varies obviously for different people, but guys are guys kind of thing. I say that because I'll just be like hanging out and all of a sudden 2 or 3 hours go by. I'm like, oh wow, it's already 10 p.m. And Melena's been upstairs in bed waiting for me for an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh. So then by the time I get up there,
I'm already sleeping.
like she's gone, and I'm like, oh, probably should have gone to bed with her. I say this again, I haven't arrived, and I've been guilty of not doing this for a long time, but the times where I have done it, it's really been special. Like, I still have to figure out how I can balance like time to unwind a little bit, if that makes sense, from the day, but also giving her the honor and respect of saying like, even those things are not as important as being with you, ending the day together kind of thing. So still trying to figure out that balance, but that's kind of where we're at currently.
And most of the time, that time at night is the only time that we really get together without interruption or without having other things grabbing our attention.
Yeah, this is unique right here because we're doing a video, but like we're not normally sitting here doing a video.
Jordan had to clear up his schedule for 3 weeks for me to get this.
But
Jordan's a very, very busy man. But, and then the other thing, again, apply this to what makes sense for you. Maybe you wake up early or your husband has to wake up really early. Do the extra step to join that time together.
So this is kind of funny for us because as long as we've been together, we've never gone to bed at the same time.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, I mean, sometimes when I'm extremely tired or I'm sick.
But that's very, very rarely. I usually go to bed, 1 to 2 hours at least before you do. I think what they're trying to say, though, and they're not doing a very good job at this, is carve out some time in your day to connect with your partner and like make that a priority.
Right.
I think that is better advice than you have to go to bed at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's good advice, but the way they deliver it is wonky.
And it's kind of like you can tell that they're getting this from like older people because that is something to a lot of, people of an older generation is important, to like go to bed at the same time and go to bed early and wake up early. Like for some reason that's like very valuable to them. And so I think it's just like they're kind of getting to something that's good, but then they like frame it in this like bizarro way where it's like, you need to be doing this.
Right. It's also assuming, I think, that you have kids and that he works a 9-to-5 job. And that's just not the case for everyone.
Yeah.
And so putting it in this way of like, oh, go to bed at the same time. Like this would be like me saying, always make your wife dinner on Thursdays. It's like, well, not every wife can't make dinner on Thursdays. That doesn't make any sense. Or like, always do such and such when your husband comes back from the skate park. Not all husbands go to the skate park.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's also like not everybody that's in, a marriage type relationship sleeps in the same room.
Yeah.
Like there are couples that, some that we personally know that have their own rooms and like they value having that kind of an independent way of living, and that's something that works for them. And
they're also, I would say, the healthiest couple that I know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they always want to say things in like very black and white terms, and it's like different things are going to work differently for different people because different people value different things. And it's working for them, and they're spending quality time together. I think that's like ultimately the most important thing is that you're spending some quality time. Then that should be all that matters. It shouldn't be like you need to sleep in the same bed and go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. Like that's arbitrary to me.
Right. For us, our quality time is we always go on a walk right after dinner as long as it's not too hot. We always go on a walk every day, and it's like at least 30 minutes, sometimes longer. Sometimes we go on 2 walks a day, depending on the schedule. And that's what we've done since we were 18, actually. And that makes a lot of sense for us. And I would recommend that other couples try it. But like, there are going to be people that live in a place where going on a walk doesn't really make much sense, or they can't walk, or, you know, they don't have time during the daytime at the same time. So maybe going to bed at the same time is better than going on a walk. It's just personal circumstance determines this.
Pick what activity and what time works for you as a couple.
Right. I find it really interesting how she's allowed to make allusions to actual sexual activity. Because like when we were younger, if you spoke like this on camera, oh my God, would have been like, you can't say, and I'll thank him for it later. Like, you could not say that. You're a whore if you say that. So just the fact that they're so conservative that they are basically platforming and recommending abuse and extreme misogyny, like, it's just weird how conservatism has evolved over the last couple decades.
Yeah. And I think that also shows that a lot of their ideas and beliefs are like incongruent. They might be contradictory in certain circumstances. And that, you know, they'll joke about sex, but then, you know, they're at the same time saying that the man needs to be in charge of everything, essentially.
Yeah, it's like I think that they pay lip service to and sometimes visit feminism in order to make things work for them when pure patriarchy and misogyny doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they don't claim that. That's not what it is.
This is going to apply if you're a parent, especially, but if you have kids, randomly and spontaneously take them out, even if it's just for 30 minutes.
Yes.
It will give your wife a much needed and deserved break.
I'm just like, in the context of being with Taylor saying, take the kids out, Taylor's like, I'm ready. Like,
let's take them out.
Taylor loves a couple of kids that are family, but not into kids otherwise. No, thank you.
No.
It will also allow you time to bond more with your kids if that's not something regularly do without your wife's presence as well.
Yes.
Again,
that's huge.
I feel like our culture in a lot of ways is waking up to this. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you know, like the boomer generation, our parents and the previous generation were like, oh no, the wives are the ones doing everything with the kids, from changing them to feeding them to putting them down to naps to playing with them. And the husband just kind of there, you know. And I think that's changing for the better now. I think a lot of husbands and fathers are waking up to like, oh no, I need to actually be present.
And who should you thank for this? Is it the church? Yeah, no, not at all. They're like, this product of feminism is so great and it's God's plan. And it's like, okay, so you're like progressive Christian. No, we're not. We're conservative evangelicals and think that the man is the head of the home and should rule the wife like a slave master. But also, I want to have sex, so sometimes I'm going to do these feminist things. Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, yeah, you are, you know, a step above, I guess, your parents' generation with the fact that you'll spend any time with your children at all.
Yeah.
But you're still framing it as like, I'm doing my wife a favor. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, you're their father. You're not doing your wife a favor or helping her out by taking your kids out and like spending time with them.
Yeah.
That is your responsibility as a father.
Yeah.
Like that's the bare minimum of what you should be doing. So it's like, yes, you are doing a little bit better than the previous generation, but you're not quite getting it.
Yeah. Are they the types that go, oh, you know, Christianity shouldn't look to the culture. We never borrow from the culture. We try to live as the earliest of Christians did. Are they those types?
I feel like I haven't watched enough of their content to know, but my guess is yes.
All right. Well,
I mean, that's what a lot of these types of Christians will always talk about, like the culture. We need to stand apart from the culture.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my point is, regardless of what they think about that, anyone watching should thank the culture for the fact that he thinks that he should, hang out with his kids.
Yeah.
And emotionally available.
Yes. I've had some of the best bonding times with our kids when it's just me and them. You know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like literally I'll go take them to the grocery store and they love going in like those little carts that have a car. So like the little, you have like the normal basket section, and then on the bottom you have like I don't know how you describe it. Like it looks like a car.
Yeah,
like a vehicle with like a fake wheel and stuff, and there's usually 2 wheels, so like Ari and Aleka can both drive.
Yeah.
And then Evangeline will sit in like the little baby thing facing towards me, and we'll just go like down the aisleways and stuff, and probably don't even buy anything, but maybe just like a couple little things that like, oh yeah, we actually needed some more salt, or like yeah, we could use some more laundry detergent. Yeah. So it's just like a random like impromptu shopping trip.
Yeah.
We will maybe spend $15 or $20. It's enough for them to like get out and look at different things, and I'll take pictures. Like that was a hack Milena came up with, that take a picture of your kid holding something that they want, and then say, all right, when your birthday comes around, we got the picture, we'll remember, you know.
Pack of marshmallows or something.
I like listen to this and I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Yeah, I would love to take such and such to like go to the grocery store. And Taylor's like, this sounds like hell.
Yeah. I have no desire to do that.
I do have to say, if I had a child named, well, first of all, I wouldn't, but Evangeline, you know what their Halloween costume would be. It'd be Neon Genesis Evangelion every single year.
Wait, he said their kid's name?
Evangeline, yeah. I think that's one of, or Evangeline, that's one of the.
Oh my.
It's wow. That sounds like a Christian name.
Yeah, it's just fun. Like the kids love it, and more than anything, you're spending time with each other. So that's a big takeaway for us.
When he does that, it means so much to me, because sometimes I am nonstop all day until that moment, and so it gives me a chance to recoup my thoughts. And then it gives me a chance to pour into him. Again, these are all things that when he does stuff like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to serve you so bad. I just want to help you. Like,
yes, Milena's cup is getting filled.
Yes.
While she's having some time, like, by herself.
Yeah, even if that means I am doing the dishes in complete silence. Like, that still is so helpful.
And then when I come home, you know, my face is all, like my hair's disheveled, my clothes are tattered. I'm like, honey, I got the kids. Then now she's filled up, ready to go.
Oh my, give them to me. I missed them.
Yeah, I mean, she has to deal with that, you know, all day long.
Right.
And you need to be like praised the fact that you dealt with that for like 1 hour.
Right. Yeah. When I am willing to share responsibility with you, just on occasion, let's say, is your thought process, wow, I really want to serve you as my master?
No.
Yeah.
No, because that's just what you do in relationships and when you care about somebody.
Yeah, like again,
you both put in effort. If we had children, I would expect you to, you know, put in equal effort that I'm putting in to take care of our children. You're not doing me a favor or like helping me out by the fact that you took them out one day for like an hour or two.
Let me be clear. It is very good and helpful and great to share responsibility. The problem is that they're framing this like this is going above and beyond, not this is just how a healthy relationship works. And so it's like, it's okay for a man not to do any of these things. But if he wants to have sex, then this, you know, if he wants to have extra sex, I should say, like this is what he should do. But at the same time, we know from the last video that you made that she says, even if he doesn't do any of these things, you still owe him sex. So yeah, absurd.
But obviously, we're kind of joking with that. But at the same time, it means a lot to your spouse to take your kids and be like, hey, I got them. Just put your feet up for the next hour and, you know, don't worry about us. Well, worry about us, but don't let it bother you or don't let it stop you from relaxing too.
All right, last one. Drum roll.
So this might come as a surprise, but husbands, work out and try to eat decently well as much as you can, because like I mentioned earlier, your wife and children and their physical safety is your responsibility by the Lord. And if you're able-bodied, of course, if there's an injury or disability or something like that,
who are you going to protect them from? Bears?
When have you ever seen a bear in Scranton?
Last year, idiot!
It's like, really, like, when are you going to have to be like fighting another dude to protect your wife? Like, yes, that happens, but that's like pretty rare.
Yeah.
So like they're putting so much emphasis on this, and it's like I feel like you're just trying to rationalize the fact that you want to be big and muscular.
This is a male fantasy. Like, I am big and strong, and I'm protecting her. And
I'm
like
protecting my property. What's mine?
Yeah, and I'm being praised for having physical characteristics that I didn't earn or, you know, I don't really control. It's kind of a form of, I don't know, chauvinism, I tend to think. I think that eating well and working out is great. And yeah, like people generally should do that, but not because they need to be willing or able to fight other people. Someone can just kill you with a weapon, dude. Like if I have a weapon, it doesn't matter how big you are. And we live in a world where weapons are really easy to access.
Yeah.
So like, that's not an argument. Just do it because it's healthy.
Yeah.
Like if he said you want to be like healthy so that you can be here for your kids and set a good example of living a healthy lifestyle for your kids. And like, you know, you want to be here to be capable of taking care of your partner when they need you, just, you know, by being healthy. Like that's valid. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm going to be able to fight off any guys that break into my house. Like that's not going to happen. You are more likely to be a physical threat to your wife and your kids than a stranger. Statistically, that's a fact.
Yeah, it's like men stockpiling weapons and having weapons placed around their house, like
as if the government couldn't come in with a tank.
Yeah,
like
and it's like home break-ins do happen, but statistically speaking, people that break into homes aren't going to injure or attempt to kill the homeowner. If they realize that the homeowner's there, they'll usually just leave. So it's like just admit, like, you just want to be a big man with a bunch of guns, or you want to be a big man with, you know, huge muscles. Like, that's really what it's about. It's not, like, about protecting somebody. And
I will say, if you say, I want to be a big man with a bunch of muscles because it makes me feel good about myself, that's great. Like, I say, go for it. Like, I'm not a Hassan fan, but Hassan says that.
Yeah, he even says, like, oh, it's really for other men.
Yeah, and like, I'm like,
other men appreciate that more than women do, which I think is a fact.
Yeah, I think that's a healthier way of looking at it than, like, having this ridiculous male fantasy that you're, like, a caveman. Like,
that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if you're able-bodied and you're capable, then you should increase your ability to protect and provide that physical safety for your family too. Mm-hmm. I think that's how God's wired us as husbands. Hot take nowadays, but I'm not saying you have to go be like the biggest, baddest dude and going around looking for a fight. And, you know, like, hey, did you look at my wife different? Like, get over here. You know, like that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like do little things, take time to actually invest in your physical and bodily well-being, because it's going to help reinforce for your wife and for your kids that, okay, dad's taking care of us. Like he's doing the things that as much as he can to take care of himself so that he can be there to take care of us, right?
That's a better way of putting it. I mean, I don't think that bringing in like being strong enough to defend them is a good way of putting it. Honestly, you can better protect your family if you simply make enough money to live in a safer area, and this is probably more important, you work on your own emotional development so that you are not a risk to your family.
Yeah, you're not the one that's the perpetrator.
Right. And not running in a bunch of patriarchal circles where men are like obsessed with being big and strong and like being dominant over women is probably a big part of that.
You notice how it's like kind of something that you touched on. It's like they'll start out with saying something that's like, okay, no, that's just totally wrong. But then they'll follow it up with like kind of a caveat that makes it kind of okay. And it's like, why didn't you just lead with that? Yeah. Lead with, you should be healthy enough to be there for your family for a long time. Like that's what's important. Yeah. It's not, you know, to defend them from like some imaginary perpetrator.
Yeah.
Paul says to Timothy that for bodily training is of some value, but spiritual training and godliness is for both valuing this life and the life to come. Meaning there's eternal benefit to spiritual training. But notice how he doesn't say bodily training is of no value. He still says there's value in that. And so while we're here in the world, do that, right? He's saying, you know, how many analogies does Paul give to training yourself and disciplining yourself to like an Olympian athlete or something, like how they'll run a race, right? And get just like a wreath crown, but we're running to a crown of glory. And what a lot of people do, I think, to the detriment of society is they'll say, oh no, Paul's talking about spiritual, like, so I'm just gonna like sit there with my gut hanging out and eating like 20 chili dogs and like, yeah, see, I don't have to worry about this. I need to worry about my spiritual life and totally disregard my like physical health. And I think it's dangerous when people try to put too much emphasis or say like, I need to be an absolute machine. I need to be neglecting my wife and my kids to go out and train for 6 hours a day.
Just like everything else, it can be an idol.
Of course, yeah. So I'm trying to walk a tightrope of balancing this between not idolizing it, but also not completely disregarding it and trying to use, a spiritual allegory to everything to say, I don't need to worry about that.
The other thing that people don't realize is that the healthier you eat and the more you work out, the higher your testosterone is. The higher your testosterone is...
There's facts there. We have way too much soy
There's a
and seed
lot of
oils.
facts on that. So if you are a wife and your husband isn't in the same level as you, well, if he could work out a little bit more and eat a little bit healthy, it could literally just be because his hormones are off or imbalanced.
Yeah, there's some micro adjustments there. Like, I just want to mention this point too, because we did like random polls and talked to random people, and we're just asking like, how often do you and your spouse have sex? We won't share that with you guys because we feel like that's probably a little too intimate unless Melena wants to, but they were saying like once a month or like every couple months, and I'm like,
no.
bro, like
No.
there's
You
like
don't need to have an exact limit, but I'll just say that once a month is substantially not enough.
Yeah, there's definitely a line, and that's on the wrong side of the line there, right?
Yes,
So
yeah.
I'm not saying it to be some like sex fiend or like worship sex.
Yeah, it's just not one size fits all.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
for some people, that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, for if both partners are saying we have sex once a month and I'm not satisfied with our sex life, okay, then that's a problem. But if people are saying we have sex once a month and that works for us, then
Who are you to tell them that's not enough?
I mean, like, we know people who have sex like very little and their relationships are much, much healthier than couples that we've known who had sex constantly.
Yeah.
It doesn't track for everyone. There's no one size fits all. Like, the Bible gives one size fits all advice in certain places. And so I think certain Christian culture also does that. They like assume that everyone is ultimately the same. And if they're not acting the same, then there's something wrong with them and that needs to be fixed. They just won't deal with the fact that there is variation psychologically and biologically with everyone.
Yeah.
So just
It's not black and white.
giving advice in this way is not even useful.
And it's also just like, what credentials, what education do you guys have to be giving sex advice to other people? Like, you know nothing about the subject, So it's like, because having sex more frequently works for you and that's what you feel like is best for your relationship does not mean that everybody else has to meet that standard.
Yeah.
Or that's what everyone else has to do.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, like you were saying, like different things work for different people and you can't just like give this black and white advice.
I don't think that the idea of, you're having a problem with your sex life and eating healthy and working out, like especially just exercising, if you're not exercising at all, like that can help. That can help things. But it's acting as if not having sex the same amount as them is always a problem, and it must indicate that someone has like a hormonal imbalance or something. And it's like, sometimes hormones are different than yours, and it's not an imbalance. They're just different, and you have to deal with that fact. Other people are not like you all the time.
Well, I think that's kind of the problem with people that are evangelical, because their mission in life is to convert everybody to their way of thinking. And so they think, how they do things is the right way to do things, and that everybody else must conform. And so that kind of thought process, when it applies to religion, I think that they also take that and try to apply it to just anything in life.
Yeah. Conform. The woman must be ultra feminine. The man must be ultra masculine. And when you make a Christian video on YouTube, your background has to be as white as possible. Conformity is key.
That is a thing.
It is.
I think in a lot of ways, I do kind of relate to them, because I think a lot of things that they think, we probably also thought when we were at the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah.
And there was somebody who commented on my last video that said that they actually like grew up with them or went to their same church.
Oh, okay.
And Melena and Jordan are like high school sweethearts. So they've been together for
like
a
as long as
long
we
time.
have.
So I'm assuming that they're around the same age as us. And I just don't think that, I don't feel like we've had like enough experience to kind of platform ourselves as like these experts on marriage and relationships.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that they have the, experience or knowledge to do the same thing.
Yeah, people have actually asked us to do like relationship advice type videos, and we have not wanted to do that because we feel like doing anything beyond like just kind of critiquing and talking about our general experience doesn't really work out. I mean, I actually have done master's level work in marriage and family counseling, but I'm not a marriage and family counselor and can't just give general advice. Fixing marriage and relationship things is not as simple as watching videos that give you advice. That's like 7 tips to do such and such. Like it doesn't work that way. The real world is much more complicated.
Nuanced.
You will need to educate yourself by reading books from actual experts, not from pastors and self-help dumbasses. And, and then also do marriage and family therapy stuff if that's something that you feel like could be useful for you. And for a lot of people, it could be.
Like, go seek out an actual licensed counselor if you're having some marriage trouble. Like, don't watch videos from, like, random people on the internet.
Including us.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we don't give, advice.
Yeah.
It's because we don't have, you do have some education, but we don't have credentials. We're not licensed to do that. And I think it's dangerous to do that. And something that's scary to me is like, Malena's a pretty big YouTuber. I think she has like 600,000 subscribers and her videos do pretty well. I know on the last video she did, I think it had like 200,000 views, which is a lot, I think. And it's like scary to think that she has such an influence and reach on people. And like the comments seem to be overwhelmingly positive and people are actually taking the advice that she gives and implementing it. And that's just scary to me because it's like, this is just a random person on the internet. Like they have no credentials to be able to be doing this.
No credentials, low effort, and plagiarism.
Yeah.
Is the way that she's maintaining an audience. And people a lot of the time don't know any better because they're conditioned to think that, well, if people say God, 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 like over and over again, then they must know what they're talking about. And I mean, some people who, believe in God and are very devout religious people, they absolutely know what they're talking about. And some people are just using that because they have been indoctrinated to think that God means good. If someone says they're a Christian, then they're a better person than a non-Christian. Life is just not that simple.
Yeah. This is kind of the end of their video. So final thoughts here. I do just find it super, super bizarre and I think kind of telling that this is supposed to be a video for men and yet I felt like they spent half of it talking about what wives need to be doing again. And
the other half talking about how men can do the bare minimum by visiting feminism once a week in order to have sex more often.
Yeah, and if we contrast what they say in this video to the last one, it's like all of the points that he gave are like the bare minimum of what you should be doing as a husband. And then all of the points that Malena gave in her other video were like catering to him and going above and beyond. So I think it's just sad to realize that in that culture, women are kind of taught that they should be, super grateful or expect their husband to do like the very least possible.
Yeah.
And like that is the most you can expect from men is like the least amount of effort.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if people have not watched the video before this one, I think it's really helpful too, especially because I'll leave a little tease for that video here. There's actually data that you cover in that video that talks about how one of the main correlates, one of the main predictors for divorce, especially in couples around this age, our age, is adherence to Protestant conservative Christianity. So go check out that video because I think it does an even more thorough debunking than we were able to do here.
Yeah, and also she, like all of the scripture that she references, every single time she references it, she misquotes it. And like builds her argument based off of her misquoting it, which is just kind of funny. Okay, can we set up to do thumbnail?
Why did you not pray? Instead, you should have prayed. You should have prayed. Don't ask.
Oops. Thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who help make these videos possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_antibot. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. Say bye!